Dropping.
Nope, 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 all the way back home.
It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on the Weather Channel. If you want to know what real Louisiana looks like, just look at this behind me. Clearing skies for the time being. We got high clouds, but it really hasn't been that bad of a weather day. We had a couple of showers, didn't last too long. Other than that, it's been overall dry, so great for preparations. But we talk about Louisiana, and of course, New Orleans brings to mind, Baton Rouge, Lake Charles, Lafayette. Those are the population centers, but the majority of the coastline actually looks like this. And cypress swamps are so important because they act as a buffer from the populated areas and can trap a lot of that surge. Think about all these cypress trees. They can handle hurricanes, and these have lived through many. In fact, Laura just recently, but they kind of take that surge. This can handle water rises, especially here out on Lake Martin and all across the swamp, Mike. And so it's extremely crucial to have these natural buffers to protect against that rising water. We know surge and wind is going to be a huge factor when it comes to Delta. What kind of winds are we looking at, Mike? And when are we expecting the worst of the winds to arrive?
You know, I think for a place like I-10, and when you're sitting there about 50 miles or so from the water, Chris, I think you're going to get those hurricane force winds likely tomorrow evening, and maybe even after sunset tomorrow. And those winds could be gusting over 75 miles an hour and potentially even higher than that. It's going to depend exactly where the eye comes in, but I'd say we're locked in for hurricane force gust. Right now we have 115 mile per hour winds with a category 3. And I want to show you the forecast cone here because where Chris is right about here. Breaux Bridge is right by Lafayette. I know we're kind of, you bisect this cone, we're on that right side of the cone, but this side of the cone, the highest impacts will be on this side if the hurricane goes right down the center of this cone. And you can see what the forecast wind speed is just offshore, 120 miles per hour. So I think we've got a pretty significant wind maker in a tight core, all right? The hurricane force winds field is not really large. It's fairly compact, but if you look at this, and this shows you the outline of the forecast cone here and where the 110 plus mile per hour winds could be. That might be very close to Lake Charles, and it might be very close to Lafayette and right where Chris is as well. That could extend even farther north there, and we think it's a pretty certain thing that we're going to see 74 plus mile per hour wind gusts here, and I think that Lafayette, maybe Baton Rouge up toward Alexandria, you're a target for that as well. So a lot of different areas here where wind becomes an issue. Also answering some of your questions that you've got at home. This one from Nikki. In terms of avoiding potential flooding, down power lines, and other property damage when returning home, would it be better for people in coastal Louisiana to evacuate east or west? I think that's another really good question. I'm going to go back to the cone here and show you that there are some areas where I think you're more likely to, I think you're probably safer to go west than you are to go east, because gradually we think the hurricane will make a turn off to the east here. It's going to get picked up by the jet stream here. So if you're evacuating and you're like, okay, do I go east on I-10 or do I go west on I-10? I think if you're sitting here in Lafayette, I still think you've got time to go to New Orleans. If you're sitting maybe in a place like Lake Charles, I think it's easier for you and quicker for you to go westbound here, more toward Houston than going toward Lafayette or New Orleans. All right, and I think you're going to encounter a lot more wind on this side of the hurricane than you will on this side of the hurricane. A lot more rain and surge on that side as well. So if you're in a place like Lake Charles, go west. Alex.
All right, thanks. And then we got to talk about the severe threat as well. Could see some strong storms today and, of course, into tomorrow as that storm moves in, makes landfall. Severe weather tends to accompany these, and tomorrow will be no exception. Delta will be no exception in terms of that risk. We look at where the system is now, of course, out over the Gulf of Mexico, and we are watching some of those thunderstorms extend into parts of the state of Louisiana right now. Also getting into parts of southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, even the western part of Florida Panhandle getting in on some storms with that right front quadrant. So when we look at a storm make landfall, where the center of the storm is, that northeast side, that's usually our hot spot for tornadoes, for severe weather that would come along with this storm. So being prepared for that threat in addition to the others, so important. We have those winds from the southeast at the surface. However, you go a little higher up and those winds become a little bit more southerly with height. So actually have some wind shear, and so many times we talk about wind shear allowing those storms to develop some rotation. So Torcon values of 2 into tonight. Again, not crazy high. We're not expecting tons of them, but know that the storms could produce tornadoes. And then we get you into tomorrow, of course, 3 out of 10 on the Torcon from Lafayette to Baton Rouge, all the way down to a place like Grand Isle, Mike.
Just one more threat that we have to follow, right? Well, still to come here on Weather Underground, our coverage of Delta continues as it strengthens and closes in on the Gulf Coast. We're going to take you back live to Louisiana. Preparations ongoing in advance of what is going to be a dangerous hurricane landfall. We're back after this. Is the forecast by tomorrow afternoon, 1:20, still at Category 3. So I would anticipate at this point a category high in Cat 2, low in Cat 3 at landfall, and then quickly degrading as it comes inland here. We think even by Saturday morning, it's barely hanging on to hurricane strength here. But the problem is we're hitting a very vulnerable coastline here where a lot of surge could be an issue for us here with an expanding tropical storm force wind field here. Not to mention with the wind speeds ticking up, we now have an increased threat for some wind damage. Already hard hit in Lake Charles, and Lafayette or Jennings, which sits right between the two, could be in for a very significant wind maker here. Hurricane warnings in effect that go all the way north past I-10 into Alexandria. The eye has become more defined today, as defined as it's ever been. We actually haven't even seen an eye until today on this hurricane, but we've got a pretty good cluster of thunderstorms, especially on the western half of the hurricane at this point, but a lot of rain bands are already sweeping through Louisiana today. Some sinking motion down into the eye, and so that's why it's starting to clear somewhat, and you can see the dark there. That's the Gulf of Mexico surface there with clusters of thunderstorms that have formed on the periphery of that eye, and we can show you that with the lightning that's formed here. Taller thunderstorms that are forming on each side of the eye throughout the day today, but right now the biggest cluster of storms is on the north side. As I was alluding to, we still have rain that's falling even well in advance of the hurricane. Look at all this rain up here through Mississippi, Louisiana, back through Texas, even through the panhandle of Florida here, where a lot of people may be planning their fall getaway. The beaches a little bit rough as you're getting a southerly push of air here, and then lines of thunderstorms that come through. We've had that today on I-10. We've now got clusters of thunderstorms from Alexandria over toward Hattiesburg, and with periods of heavy rain now and then more intense rain when the hurricane makes landfall. This entire area in green, Yazoo City to Port Arthur to Morgan City, all under a flash flood watch, Alex. In some places here, the rainfall will exceed half a foot.
And here's what we know right now about Hurricane Delta. 9.5 million people are in Delta's cone. States of emergencies have been issued in Louisiana, Alabama, and Mississippi. The Louisiana Department of Transportation says evacuations are causing heavy congestion on I-10. It's westbound from Lake Charles to the Louisiana-Texas state line. And those effects for Delta will extend far beyond the coast. Mike just showed us the flash flood watches that are posted. Well, 40 miles inland is Jennings, Louisiana. That's where we find our meteorologist Paul Goodloe tonight. Hey, Paul.
Hey there, Alex. Again, we are kind of midway between Lake Charles off to our west and Lafayette off to our east as well. And here in Jennings along Bayou Nipiquet. And I tell you what, just kind of take a broad view here. I mean, this picture, you got the moss from some of these trees. It's basically quintessential Louisiana. which also means we have a lot of water. And water is going to be something we're definitely concerned about with the approach and landfall of Hurricane Delta as we head throughout the day and also into tomorrow night. Unlike, say, Laura, which came through in the middle of the night, well after midnight, this one's going to come through starting tomorrow afternoon and won't quit perhaps until after midnight. And we have a chance seeing that eye coming on through here. Now, along this bayou, it's kind of fed by rainwater. And during Laura, the water was over my head. So we can see a lot more water kind of spilling over some of the banks of the bayou here. But the homes are generally built up higher, not a big concern. But as we move off to the west, we have the town of Welsh, about maybe 10, 12 miles from us. That's where the center point is, which means we are going to be most likely in that eye wall, or perhaps even the eye for a while here, which means we're going to see the brunt of some of the strongest winds, and we're only 40 miles from the coast, so there's definitely going to be a surge control. This bayou is also controlled by locks, so they're probably going to be closed, so we won't see that full backup of that storm surge here. Hopefully that'll be the case, but there's always concern when you have this much water around. You mentioned the rain as well. We could see 4, 6, maybe even 8 inches of rain. That too will help rise the water here as well. And then the wind. We're talking a Category 3 hurricane once again, perhaps making landfall in less than 24 hours or about 24 hours from now. So preparations are underway. We're seeing people finding what little and what few gas stations are still open, trying to fuel up because power outages. You see some of these beautiful trees here. Yeah, they've taken a beating with Laura, and now perhaps even stronger winds with Delta coming this way because that center point a little closer to this town of Jennings as well. All right, as we head east of here, as the crow flies, we head to Breaux Bridge, also where my colleague Chris Bruin is. And Chris, while we might actually get the eye over here, you guys might be just enough east where you don't get the eye, you just get the eye wall from start to finish with this system.
Yeah, and that's a problem. And remember, too, we're going to be on that right side, so we're going to have that onshore flow. Winds around a tropical cyclone go counterclockwise. So where the storm comes ashore, to the east of there is where you have all the rise and water. And that is going to be a problem here for south central Louisiana. It is dead calm out here right now. Great day for preparations. We're about 10 miles away from downtown Lafayette, so we're not far. But the majority of Louisiana looks like this behind me. You've got swamps and just rural area. Atchafalaya Basin covers a huge stretch. If you've driven around I-10, you know you have a bridge between Baton Rouge and Lafayette for about 20 miles because you're going over water that whole time. So we're vulnerable to surge, but this is how the topography handles that and actually acts as a buffer in preparation. People today were getting supplies. They were stocking up. Businesses were boarding up. That's what we were seeing there around downtown Lafayette. But it was essentially business as usual. Even the campus was open today. They will be closed tomorrow, and most places, businesses as well, will be closed tomorrow. Now, we talked to EOC Craig Stansbury, the local EOC here. Here's what he had to say in preparation for those who are staying in expectations of power outages.
There's a possibility you could be without electricity for several days, depending on how bad things are. So what is your situation? Do you have elderly with you? Do you have people on medication? So a lot of people have special needs that would be, something that would be very dangerous for them or put them in a really desperate situation. If that's the case, we definitely suggest that, you evacuate.
All right, so power outages are going to be a big impact here, not only Lafayette, but all of southwestern and south central Louisiana. Remember, we're going to have a broad wind field here. So winds in excess of 75 to over 100 miles per hour expected, and near that eye, we could have wind gusts over 100 to 115 miles per hour. Major hurricane right now, Hurricane Delta as it approaches. Now, even with some weakening, it's still going to be a strong Category 2, and it may hold on to its major hurricane status as it approaches the shore. Rainfall will be heavy in those heaviest bands. Tropical systems alone, doesn't matter how quick they're moving, Mike, they're going to produce a lot of rain. Likely some places may get 6 to 12 inches. But let's talk about that wind field. Laura's was very compact. It was a small storm, fast moving, but in Lake Charles, devastating impacts. Here in Lafayette, manageable, and it's hard to even tell a hurricane came through 8 weeks ago. Right. This may be different with the wind field affecting a lot larger of an area?
Well, a couple different things here, Chris. Delta's hurricane force winds are even smaller than Laura's, but at the angle it comes in, it may go just slightly to the east of Lake Charles, which could put a place like Jennings or Lafayette at greater risk for wind damage than what it saw during Hurricane Laura. But yes, to the point about the tropical storm force winds, they extend out quite a bit here, and we could see those go all the way east to Baton Rouge and even a New Orleans here. So wouldn't rule out completely that we could get some even power outages in those locations as well. But Chris, appreciate the report tonight from Louisiana. More with Chris and Paul coming up here in just a little bit. But let's talk more about the winds that we're seeing right now. Very light, only about 10 miles an hour. New Orleans, Lake Charles, and in Houma, mostly out of the east at this point. There's a look at when the tropical storm force winds arrive for you, likely along the coastline tomorrow morning, with the winds only accelerating throughout the day, and with the big core of winds going to be very near where the landfall location is. I'm just going to draw a circle. The approximate location will be about right in here. That'd be about the center track of the hurricane cone, and then moving off in this direction. So yes, a place like Lafayette is going to be at risk for a very intense core of wind. And when you take a look at that forecast, it's Lake Charles, it's Jennings, it's Lafayette. These are the places where really intense winds could come in, but also would not be completely surprised to see a hurricane force wind gust over toward Baton Rouge, or as far north as Alexandria, as far west potentially as a Port Arthur, Texas. So there's a look at the core of the winds. The red is where the hurricane force winds will be. The yellow is where tropical storm force winds will be. And a landfall time approximately 7 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. And there it comes inland tomorrow, very near Lake Charles, or maybe right between Lake Charles and Lafayette for us tomorrow, going up through Louisiana. And then the core of the winds may be near the center, which could be up toward here, but more toward the east, I would anticipate being some of the more intense winds that come along with this into some very forested locations, unfortunately. So let's talk a little bit more about that gust forecast through the overnight. Winds start to pick up for us. Gets very windy through the day tomorrow, and then gets downright violent as the hurricane makes landfall, as I was alluding to, sometime probably between 6 and 8 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. Lake Charles, your winds will be 60 to 75. Baton Rouge, 40 to 50, with the really intense winds on the northern eye wall and likely the eastern eye wall here. So that's going to put areas along I-10 through Louisiana at risk, sitting in central Louisiana overnight on Saturday. So a lot of things to consider here, Alex, but certainly that core of winds is going to be devastating in a very small window here.
Yeah, and a core of heavy rain as well. So we could be looking at some really heavy totals that could induce some flash flooding. Now, it's not one of those systems or storms that we've seen here over the past few months that sits and brings a ton of rain, but still we could be looking at some heavy rain. So because of that, we've got flash flood watches posted for portions of Texas, a lot of Louisiana, and into the state of Mississippi. What we're looking at in terms of totals would be in excess of 5 to 8 inches down there near Lake Charles and closer to the coast. A big footprint of 5 to 8 inches, though. That's the area in the orange that you see. So plenty of spots could be looking at over a half foot of rainfall out of this storm. Then we look at the radar itself. Where is this rainfall going to line up, and when is it going to move in? Well, already this afternoon, we've seen showers and thunderstorms that are heavy at times. Overnight, still watching for that potential for off and on showers, thunderstorms, but the heaviest, steadiest rain begins to move in mid to late tomorrow morning and continues through the afternoon. This is when we're going to pick up some of those really, really torrential totals and torrential rainfall along with the heavy wind. Look at 5 o'clock tomorrow in Lake Charles all the way up to Louisiana. Big rain. That moves up into the northern part of the state, heading into parts of Arkansas late Friday and into early Saturday. So we'll keep the rain going, and we'll keep the flash flood threat also going. Now into tomorrow morning, we've got areas into Louisiana all the way over into the Big Bend of Florida. So we could see flash flooding getting over well to the east of the center of this storm. And then tomorrow into early Saturday, Mike, that's when we think the chance of flash flooding is going to go up. Highest in those areas from Lake Charles up to near the Arkansas state line.
Truly, maybe the only saving grace is that this thing is moving. It's not going to stall out like a lot of previous systems have done. Hopefully, that'll keep our rainfall amounts in check. Having said that, there's still going to be some very intense rain. We've already had it today. Outer bands of rain that have rolled through, at times squally weather, producing wind gusts over 40 miles an hour. The intense rain just just remains through the morning and actually will only get more intense as we go through the day and then steadier. You won't have breaks between some of these squall lines. Look what happens for us 10 o'clock in the morning. We are just absolutely getting lit up here on I-10 with heavy showers and thunderstorms. Could not rule out potential tornado spin-ups within some of these thunderstorm bands. Here we are now 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the eye sitting just off the Louisiana coastline here. I-10 once again at risk, but really Lake Charles to Alexandria to Lafayette getting hit very hard with showers and thunderstorms with the very gusty winds within that. The center coming in right about here. Heavy rain. Alexandria up toward Shreveport. Port as far then west as maybe even a Lufkin, Texas here. That rain still to come, a very small area of maybe up to 8 inches of rain, but a large area here of 6 to 8 inches of rain, and rain that continues right up the lower Mississippi River Valley here. For a place like Baton Rouge, I think we'll get some pretty heavy bands of rain that come in. New Orleans, it's going to be more, you're more in the periphery, all right? So could you see some bands that come in there? Yes, it's possible, and maybe even a brief tornado spin up, I would say is possible between New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette on I-10 here, but the heaviest of the rain is likely to be a little bit farther west of New Orleans, but Baton Rouge, I think we're in for a solid 3 to 4 inches of rain, if not more than that. The thunderstorms continue into Friday evening and Saturday morning. Still to come here on the show tonight, coverage of Hurricane Delta as it strengthens in the U.S. Gulf of Mexico waters here. We're going to take you back live to the coast where evacuations continue in advance of Hurricane Delta's approach.
You're watching America's most trusted TV news network,
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
the Weather Channel. Hurricane season doesn't stop for a pandemic, and neither do we.
From this point forward, conditions will continue to deteriorate.
Don't let COVID-19 take your eye off the tropics. This year's threat is more complex and dangerous than ever before.
Remain vigilant, pay close attention to the Weather Channel.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe every day. Storm safety in a pandemic, all season long, right here on the Weather Channel.
Welcome back in this evening to the Weather Channel's continuing live coverage here of Hurricane Delta. We're going to be with you through the night and through the next 48 hours as we embrace what's about to be had upon us here in the Louisiana coastline, especially in hard-hit areas like Lake Charles. We're at a swamp, and this is what the most of the ground looks like south of I-10. So you take I-10, we're near Lafayette, about 10 miles. We're about 40 miles away from the actual Gulf of Mexico, and between here and the water's edge is landscape that looks just like this. It's mostly water and swamp habitats. You do have some very rural communities and fish camps, and a lot of those that are actually on stilts. But this area is vulnerable for surge, but it's needed because it's landscape like this that protects the populated central cities like Lafayette, like Morgan City and Houma, Louisiana, certainly New Orleans. So when you have a lot of landscape that covers swampland and grounds, it acts as a deterrent for the surge. So what happens is the surge comes in. At times people say it's like a wall of water, and it can be like that. But when it comes into the swamp forest, Mike, all these little eddies and everything. If you look, the water cover, I mean, these trees are water resistant. They can be made to handle flooding and certain things. And if these trees could talk, boy, could they tell stories. But this is needed. And you run into issues, Mike, when you clear a lot of these or these swamps die. And so that's something that I know Louisiana and Florida have been trying to do to help mitigate some of the vulnerability here when it comes to hurricanes.
A lot of places, they'll even throw, the Christmas trees in there to create, more buffer. I mean, it's amazing how much we've lost there in Louisiana of our buffer and the marshlands that have been eroded away here by the water rise. But Chris, it becomes a very big danger in a lot of places. Appreciate the report there, but we know that we're going to take a pretty heavy hit from Hurricane Delta, unfortunately, and this coming just on the heels of Hurricane Laura about 6 weeks ago. So there's a look at the forecast track, and you can see it's basically at the Texas-Louisiana state line, head over toward maybe a Pecan Island here. But the forecast for Friday afternoon is a 120-mile-per-hour Category 3 just offshore here by about 75 miles or so. Now, the core of the most intense winds does not extend that far out from the eye. It's a pretty compact area of intense winds, only goes out about 35 miles from the center. So we think that's a small area that might help reduce the amount of wind damage that we get. But if you're within that core, you're going to get hammered. And that will include near Lake Charles, around Jennings, over toward Lafayette. You split difference right in the middle there is Jennings. But a large tropical storm force wind field, which might be enough to uproot some trees, might be enough to knock down some power lines. And so just keep in mind there could be power outages that go well beyond where the hurricane force winds are themselves. But it's a smaller wind field than even what Laura was. It's a Category 4, this one was. So this one could be a little bit less intense and a little bit smaller. Doesn't mean it won't have huge effects, but the eerie similarity is where it's headed, right? Very close to where Laura made landfall. But it was Lake Charles. They see now Laura came in more in this direction, whereas we think that this one's going to go more in this direction. So there could be other areas farther to the east that will feel the effects of this hurricane that did not feel them during Hurricane Laura. Again, at this point, with Delta's forecast track only being about 15 miles from Laura's, it's a devastating hit. And a lot of places here that are going to feel some significant wind and some significant surges, especially on the east side. Now, Lake Charles, what happened to us was basically the hurricane came right on top of us, and even with a slight jog to the west, we had a really strong core in the eastern eye wall there. Delta's track could go off to your east, which would put you on the west side, which at some point is going to give you a really strong north wind here in Lake Charles, but the eye could potentially come right over a place like Jennings, Louisiana. By the way, the record for landfalls in a single season in Louisiana is 4. It happened back in 2002. Numerous seasons we've had 3, including this year. So with the landfall of Delta, we will tie the record for most landfalls in Louisiana in a single season at 4, Alex.
Yeah, so it has been one heck of a year. If you're thinking, gosh, this year has been strange, it has. We're up there. And, following Hurricane Laura, 9 of the 25 deaths from that storm were actually a result of carbon monoxide poisoning from people who are using generators indoors. So we look at the forecast. We know we've got a Cat 3 hurricane on our hands. We know it's going to make landfall into the day tomorrow, most likely about 24 hours from now. We also know that will be accompanied by strong winds and likely a lot of power outage. We look at the max wind potential and then where we expect most of the power outages. So prepare to be without power and think about using that generator safely. We want you to survive the storm, but we want you to stay safe after the fact, even if you're using the generators. So after the storm, make sure you're operating that generator outside. Never run it in a home, never run it in a garage. Don't run it on the porch attached to your home. Don't plug it into walls. Use a heavy-duty extension cord to connect appliances and turn the generator on before you start attaching appliances to it. This is all really important. I know sometimes I can't even keep track of it. These can be so helpful after the storm, but you got to use them correctly. Well, still to come, we are getting you a look at what the hurricane hunters are finding tonight as Delta continues to strengthen. It's all next as Weather Underground continues.
Cameras roll.
This is something nobody can imagine.
Our experts react.
What do you do?
Oh my gosh!
Jaw-dropping.
Nope, all the way back home.
It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
This is the worst case scenario for the state of Louisiana. The devastation that is in southwest Louisiana right now as a result of Hurricane Laura is far and wide. Delta now taking a very similar track as Hurricane Laura, taking aim at areas in Morgan City, Cameron, and Calcasieu parishes. This is a very tense and serious situation that the entire country needs to pay attention to.
Thanks for being with us tonight as we track Hurricane Delta for you. Could become our 10th landfalling tropical system this hurricane season. It's been a historic and record-breaking season in so many ways. We know a lot of you have questions about Hurricane Delta, so if you're on Twitter or Facebook tonight, make sure you send your questions to us. Be sure to include the hashtag Hurricane Questions. We'll answer as many live on the show tonight through 9 o'clock as we can. All right, I want to update you on what we know about Hurricane Delta at this point. It is a Category 3 hurricane with winds at 115 miles per hour. The pressure has started to drop again and the wind speeds are going up again. Moving northwest at 12 miles per hour, so just a little bit slower than it was yesterday. 345 miles south of Cameron, Louisiana, which sits about right here. I'll put a big red dot on it. Right there is about where Cameron is, and it's taking aim at us. We've got an eye that has formed today. We hadn't seen an eye to this point, but we have one now, and we've got some sinking air down through the middle, so we've got a pretty well-formed hurricane at this point. Hurricane 1 is extend from Port Arthur and Beaumont, Texas, all the way eastbound to Morgan City, Louisiana, Lake Charles and Lafayette included in that, and going as far north as Alexandria, Louisiana. These are the places that could expect hurricane-force winds with Hurricane Delta. The hurricane hunters are out there right now. The Air Force plane is flying through it at this point. On the first pass through the eye wall, winds way up here, over 100 miles an hour. So I think we're getting some verification of what the winds are doing right now with the advisories. Then going through the other side of the eye wall, a little bit lower wind speeds there as it emerged out on one side. But what we're going to end up seeing here is numerous passes through this over the course of the next 24 hours. It's going to give us excellent information on what exactly the hurricane is doing and where it's headed. The forecast track, as you might have noted the last couple of days, has barely budged. I mean, it is stayed very, very consistent here. You'll look at the satellite imagery, a pretty well-formed hurricane, although more of the thunderstorm activity near the eye is more to the west than it is on the eastern side, but some of the most intense winds will end up being on the eastern side and a bigger wind field on the eastern side of the hurricane. There's no wind shear to speak of right now, so we've got warm sea surface temperatures. We also have very little wind shear. It's all exposed off to the north here, so wind shear won't become a factor till closer to landfall, but you can see where the forecast spaghetti model tracks go right into southwest Louisiana, potentially Category 3 hurricane. Not off the table here with a forecast of 120 just off the coastline tomorrow afternoon. So a lot to watch for sure. And we know that the impacts for Delta are going to extend well beyond the coastline here. So let's take you up toward I-10 in Jennings, Louisiana. Our Paul Goodloe is there. Paul, it's not out of the question that the eye of Hurricane Delta could come right over Jennings.
Right now, the forecast is to come just the center, to come just 12 miles west of here. But again, if this forecast moves a little bit, we could be definitely right in the center of that. Most definitely we'll have the eye, if not the eye wall, a couple of eye walls coming on through the front eye wall, even the back side of the eye as well. Right now, we're seeing what we don't want is more rainfall here, which is to do nothing but kind of prime the ground to saturate it. So the rain, the heavy rain we do have tomorrow with the approach and landfall of Delta will bring more rain and will do nothing but kind of run off. We're here at Bayou Nipiquet, and this is basically all rainwater fed here. And with all the rain we had about a month and a half ago with Laura, this was over my head. So that's how much this bayou can kind of rise here. But I tell you what, it is a gorgeous looking bayou, even with a slight rainfall right now. You can hear some of the frogs chirping as well. But this is a boat ramp, and typically during heavy rain events, we can get that water up almost to the road here. So it's the big concern, not only with the rain, but also with the wind as well. We're talking, we are 40 miles away from the Gulf of Mexico, and we're about, say, 40 miles to the west or east of Lake Charles. So, yeah, we had a near miss in terms of the strongest part of the hurricane with Hurricane Laura, but I think we're going to have probably most likely a direct hit in this area as we head through tomorrow. So we do expect our winds to kick up as well as that rain tomorrow morning. And then we go from tropical storm force winds to hurricane force winds throughout the afternoon or the evening. And then as that center passes us by, we could have a brief calm in the eye. And then we have that backside to come through. But we still know that bulk of the weather that we'll experience with Delta is going to come through during the day. So basically now you have maybe an hour or two left of sunlight to rush your preparations in this part of Louisiana before we got to wait out yet another hurricane approaching the area. Mike?
Here we go again. We've done this song and dance way too many times in Louisiana. Paul, thanks for the update there, and still to come on Weather Underground tonight as we track Delta. Our coverage continues with in-depth analysis right up through landfall and beyond as the Louisiana coastline braces for another hurricane hit.
America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting a full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
All right, pretty quiet night here, a calm night in the swamps back around Lafayette, Louisiana, as we await dangerous Hurricane Delta. Guys, major hurricane, timing things out. Here's where we go from here. This is the last few hours of pretty tranquil weather. We're going to start watching the rain pick up. Those outer bands are going to start moving through overnight while you're sleeping. We didn't have a lot of them today, but tomorrow morning, it'll be a very different story. Already getting pretty cloudy. Winds haven't really picked up, but in the morning, you're going to notice those breezes, at times gusting to tropical storm force, heavy rainfall, and that only gets worse through the late morning and afternoon hours, and then landfall sometime after lunchtime, most likely, as the worst of the conditions will be late morning through the afternoon, not only here in Lafayette, but into Lake Charles and all of southwestern and south central Louisiana, Mike.
All right, Chris, thanks so much for that update. Appreciate what you're doing for us there. I want to check in with NBC's Chris Pallone. He's live in Lafayette, Louisiana for us this evening. Chris, what's the latest?
Yeah, Mike, you know, as we've been saying all day, that this area certainly used to hurricanes, but that doesn't mean that the people here aren't weary from all the ones they've had to deal with. You know, if Delta makes landfall in the state of Louisiana as forecast, that'll be the fourth time that has happened this year, which of course would be a record since they've been keeping records. People here are just hoping for the best.
In Lafayette, Louisiana, last-minute preparations before Delta arrives. Clayton Broussard filling sandbags yet again.
Didn't have any damage for the last storm, but you know, this one here is supposed to be a little worse, coming in closer to us, so I'm just trying to be prepared.
That last storm was Laura just 6 weeks ago. It devastated Lake Charles about 75 miles west of Lafayette. That city now under a mandatory evacuation. Some who had their homes damaged or destroyed haven't even made it back yet.
Really, the word is disbelief. Like, how could this be happening again?
Delta is moving faster than Laura did, but flash flooding, deadly storm surge, downed trees and power lines are all possible from Texas to Mississippi.
Even if we just get sideswiped at this point, we're still going to possibly have tropical storm winds that are going to blow this debris around and make conditions unsafe for us.
Kind of wish it was going somewhere else, but it doesn't look like it. Got to get all my loose stuff up.
The storm is strengthening in the Gulf after lashing the resort city of Cancun, Mexico. So far, no deaths have been reported, but for people now in Delta's path, time is running out.
Southwest Louisiana is going to get more of a punch from this than we would like to see for sure, because we're still trying to recover from Hurricane Laura.
As they prepare, people in the Pelican State are ready for hurricane season to end.
Oh, I'll jump for joy. I would jump for joy.
That joy still a ways off. Hurricane season still has 7 more weeks to go.
And flooding is always a concern here along the Vermilion River, which runs through Lafayette. Locals will tell you, and I saw it with my own eyes during Laura, that this river will actually stop and start going back upstream before it starts spilling over its banks. As you've been saying all day, there are portions of the state that could get upwards of 10 inches of rain, Mike.
It's going to be one to watch. There's no question about it. You got to just feel for the folks that are going through this for another time. Chris, appreciate the report tonight. Chris Pallone joining us from Lafayette, Louisiana. Let's update you on the current conditions with this hurricane. In the last advisory that came in at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, 4 o'clock Central Time, it's gone back up to a 115-mile-per-hour Category 3 hurricane. The pressure has been dropping. Hurricane hunters out there right now also noticing a pressure drop. So wouldn't be out of the question to see the wind speeds go up even more this evening with that pressure that's dropping, meaning an intensifying hurricane. Northwest movement at 12 miles per hour and sitting about 345 miles south of Cameron, Louisiana. So Cameron sits about right in here, and we think it's making a beeline there for the coastline of Louisiana. The hurricane has an eye in it now, which it did not have at any point prior to today, but the forecast goes back up to 125, stays at 120 through tomorrow afternoon, and it might be a Category 3 even at landfall with a quick dissipation after that. It's going to be very close right at landfall what the wind speeds are, but I think all of the storm surge is already baked in regardless if it weakens right at landfall or not. The winds, though, if they can come down right at landfall, I think that would save us some huge headaches and a lot of damage along I-10 in particular. Hurricane warnings, Beaumont to Lake Charles, Lafayette, Morgan City included in that, and as far north as Alexandria, we could see hurricane force winds. The infrared satellite shows you that we've got a lot of bright cloud tops in the white, especially here on that northwest quadrant. But we've got a larger wind field expanding to the east than to the west. That's more about the forward motion of the hurricane more than anything else. And some sinking air going down into the middle of this, where at times you could see the Gulf of Mexico surface there, but that's now starting to be obscured a little bit more as more thunderstorms are starting to wrap around the entire system at this point. And you can see with the lightning that we've been tracking today, there have been some pretty good thunderstorms, potentially another nighttime blow up of convection tonight like we saw yesterday. The storms are already begun here in the northern periphery of the hurricane with some heavy rain through Louisiana today. We'll get continued bands of heavy rain through the night tonight, then more steady heavy rain through the day tomorrow. Flooding, obviously a concern. All these areas highlighted in green that go way up past Yazoo City even could be looking for half a foot or more of rain. We hope you can stick around. A lot more to come here on Weather Underground, answering your questions tonight. So include the hashtag Hurricane Questions on your tweets and your Facebook post. We'll answer your questions live tonight as we watch Hurricane Delta, a major hurricane spinning closer and closer to the Louisiana coastline. Landfall 24 hours from now.
She wanted a roommate who could help with.
When your cameras roll,
This is something nobody can imagine.
our experts react.
What do you do?
Oh my gosh! Jaw-dropping.
Nope, 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 all the way back home.
It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
Welcome back to Weather Underground. I'm meteorologist Paul Goodlow live in Jennings, Louisiana, along Bayou Nepiquet here. The good news is we shouldn't see too much tidal surge on this bayou. The bad news is we're going to see a lot of the bayou rise because of rainwater. This is really a rain-fed bayou here, so about the eastern half of Jeff Davis Parish kind of drains into this bayou, and we're expecting heavy rain. We're getting kind of the appetizer of this rain right now, and much more heavy rain as we head over the next 24 hours, even 36 hours as well. So we do expect the approach and landfall of Hurricane Delta sometime perhaps midday to afternoon hours tomorrow in terms of that eye coming on shore. Not until that center point makes landfall. That might not be until perhaps tomorrow evening, but we have all that weather before we get to that center point, and that's what's coming on shore as we head from sunup tomorrow, basically past sundown. So we expect the heavy rain to continue, and this bayou has risen a lot higher, perhaps just over my head here, about a month and a half ago when Hurricane Laura made landfall just to the west of here. Lake Charles is about, say, 40, 45 miles west of here, and they got hit pretty hard here. But the thing with Delta is Delta is going to become a lot closer, perhaps maybe 10 miles, if not even closer, depending on that final track. And that means more significant impact, not only with the rain, but really with the wind. We saw the pictures in Lake Charles and the damage and the windows blown out of that one office tower there. We could see winds like that. We had roof damage in some of the homes here. We could see a lot more roof and tree damage here as well, and power. Yeah, power was basically wiped off the earth there in Lake Charles. We could be dealing with long-term power outages here in this part of Louisiana with the approach and landfall of Delta over the next 24 to 36 hours. Mike?
All right, Paul, thank you so much for the update tonight. And Jennings, a city that is potentially in grave danger with maybe even a center coming right over that town. And we're answering your questions tonight. We hope you can send as many as you can tonight because we're going to answer them live. Terry asking this: y'all keep saying it's moving right along, even though Delta has steadily slowed over the last 5 updates. Is there a reason you don't expect it to really stall out like the others, or at what point do you start getting concerned? I appreciate the question there, Terry. The reason we expect it not to stall is because it doesn't have anything to block it necessarily. So I'm gonna draw on here where the steering patterns are right now. We've got a high pressure that sits over here, and that's mostly been responsible for pushing it off to the west or northwest. So a high pressure sitting right about here. Again, remember, we've got clockwise flow around high pressure. So at this point, that keeps it from going more east. But we've also got, as this is going to start to break down a little bit and shift, we're also going to get a trough that is going to sit in right about here, okay? So as the hurricane starts to pull its way north, kind of slingshotting around that high pressure, it's then going to get picked up by the steering flow here. Now you're talking some pretty good mid and upper level winds that are pushing off to the north and east. So basically the hurricane's going to hitch a ride on that, all right? If there were, say, a blocking high pressure that were sitting up here, then that would stall it out, all right? But we don't have that. The high pressure is more off to the east of the storm, and so we think there's an avenue for it to escape basically here, then catch a ride on the jet stream, and away it goes here. But great question, appreciate that. But again, you know, if it slows down to 10 miles an hour or so, that's possible. I think as soon as it gets to the coastline here, it starts to reaccelerate once it's picked up by that trough. So there's a look at the forecast. Wind speeds forecast to be 120. But again, notice that it's moving along here. If it wasn't moving along very fast, you'd see all these different time markers spaced much closer together. But they're spaced apart, so we anticipate continued forward movement here. But again, great question, Terry. The 110-plus mile-per-hour winds, so we could be talking Category 3 winds, highlighted in the purple area on this map. We've highlighted in white the outline of the forecast track, all right? But maybe with a landfall happening, just say, for argument's sake, right in the middle of that cone, the areas in purple: Lake Charles, Jennings, Lafayette, Cameron, Grand Chenier. These are all places where you could have 110-plus mile-per-hour gusts. We do think a quick weakening happens after landfall, but still maybe as far east even as Baton Rouge, we could have hurricane-force wind gusts, similar force maybe over toward Port Arthur and as far north as Alexandria. We think that is enough to knock out power, knock down some trees, uproot some trees, and it could extend out into the tropical storm force region of winds as well, which is a very large wind field. It goes out as much as 160 miles now from the center. Winds are pretty light right now. They intensify overnight tonight. Really gets windy for us through the day tomorrow. Landfall tomorrow evening coming through Louisiana, and gradually the winds come down. But in that core of highest winds, and it's likely going to be about in this area right here, anticipate winds that could gust well over 100 miles an hour. We hope you can stick around. A lot more to come here in the next hour of Weather Underground. Hurricane Delta strengthens. It closes in on the U.S. Gulf Coast. We're going to take you back live to our meteorologists in the field in Louisiana this evening for what's happening right now as people board up in anticipation of a major hurricane.
Domino's knows.
Next on Weather Underground, Hurricane Delta closes in on the U.S. Gulf Coast. We have extended coverage tonight as this powerful storm strengthens in the Gulf of Mexico, barreling towards landfall. We go in depth on where dangerous storm surge, damaging winds, and flooding rainfall will hammer the coastline and push well inland. in this same area ravaged by Hurricane Laura just about a month ago, where evacuations underway and preparations being rushed to completion as another monster storm bears down. We have live coverage of this developing situation next on Weather Underground. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being with us for live special coverage of Hurricane Delta. I'm Mike Bettis. Alex Wilson. Standstill traffic. It was at a crawl trying to get out of town. Let's tell you what we know right now about Hurricane Delta. It's a Category 3, a major hurricane as they're designated. When it's Category 3 or higher, it's given the designation of a major hurricane. Winds at 115 with 959 millibars of pressure. Hurricane hunters have been out there through the evening. They're actually measuring pressure that's lower than 959 right now. So what that's telling you is the hurricane's still intensifying, and hurricane winds might go up as a result. Northwest movement at 12 miles per hour and 345 miles outside of Cameron, Louisiana. The forecast track has varied little over the course of the last 2 days, pretty much locked in at this point, but to 120 miles per hour as we're now in a low wind shear environment, warm sea surface temperatures, and so there's a ripe atmosphere here. Secured as we're getting more clusters of thunderstorms around the center here, and so we're starting to get a little bit of overcast around the eye at this point, but wouldn't be surprised along I-49 tonight, and waves of storms coming through Lake Charles as well. Because we're getting the rain now, because heavier rain is going to come in and steadier rain is going to come in tomorrow, this entire area in green, Yazoo City, Monroe, Louisiana, Alexandria, Baton Rouge, Morgan City, Lake Charles, and Port Arthur. These are all locations where flooding is a possibility for you here, with flooding rain that could exceed 8 inches in localized spots. As we go through the morning tomorrow, very windy, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Lake Charles, and as the hurricane approaches, the winds only go up. Look for a landfall time between 6 and 8 o'clock tomorrow Central Time, with a core of winds that could exceed 100-mile-per-hour gusts at the coastline there, and maybe even as far north as I-10. Well, let's show you what we know right now about Hurricane Delta. We got about 10 million people that are in Delta's cone. States of emergency have been issued in Louisiana, in Alabama, and in Mississippi. The Louisiana Department of Transportation says evacuations causing heavy congestion on I-10 westbound from Lake Charles to the Texas state line. Let's get you more now with Alex.
All right, and the impacts from Delta will extend far beyond the coast. In fact, as Mike just mentioned, the wind, the rain threat will extend into interior parts of Louisiana. One of those spots, 40 miles inland, Jennings, Louisiana. That's where we find Paul Goodlow. Paul, some raindrops there, and it's going to be much heavier. This is really just the beginning.
Yeah, this is really nothing compared to what's going to happen 24 hours, even maybe, say, 12 hours from now. We start seeing the onslaught of that rain coming in just north of that center with here's some thunder overhead with Delta. So we started today in New Orleans and drove this way. Mike mentioned the traffic, say, from Lake Charles west to the Texas line. There was some traffic on I-10 going east of, say, Lafayette into, say, Baton Rouge. It was bumper to bumper from time to time. So a lot of people trying to get east and west of Lake Charles out of that direct path here. We're in Jennings, Louisiana, here then along the banks of Bayou, this bayou here, which is going to rise with that rainwater here. So even today's rain is not really helping. It's kind of the precursor. We can still see maybe a half a foot of rain. This is a rain-fed bayou here, and we're going to see this come up. But I think our most damaging aspect with this system is going to be the wind, because we're probably going to get, if not the center, pretty close to that center, which means we're going to go through the front eye wall and the back eye wall, and we're going to be on the east side of that center, some of the strongest winds with this system. So you see around me a lot of beautiful trees, beautiful moss hanging from some of these trees. We're going to have trees come down. We're going to have power lines come down. Power outages is going to be perhaps the widespread calling card in terms of the impacts to people. Yes, also roof damage, home damage as well, but you can call someone and fix that. But if you have no cell service, because the cell towers are down, no power for them, that's what you're going to feel. And that's what's going to take, this muggy night when this hurricane passes by, turns into these hot, humid days. no air conditioning. So creature comforts might be in short supply here in the aftermath of Delta. So a lot of people now trying to get their generators ready, try to get their fuel for their generators, because they might be on generator power for a couple of days, hopefully just a couple of days at the most, if not like our neighbors to the west in Lake Charles. Still, many have just gotten power back the last week or two. So we don't hope that comes this way, but the forecast is it probably will. But even east of here, we go 50 miles or so to Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. That's where Chris Bruin is. And you too, Chris, you're going to be in that right front quadrant, which means a lot of heavy rain, but also a lot of strong winds. And you could be on that right center for hours upon hours in the brunt of those winds.
Yeah, that's what we were in Pensacola. So for those who were in Pensacola, remember how long-lasting Sally was. Well, this is a much faster storm, but if you don't get in the eye, you stay in the core of the winds longer than if you get in the eye. Either way, it's going to be a damaging, life-threatening event here, so take it seriously. If you're on the edge about evacuating, remember, in those mandatory evacuations, you need to get out. And Lafayette, this has been 6 times this year alone that we've had to deal with preparing for tropical storms and hurricanes. The mayor of Lafayette, Josh Guillory, had some of this to say for those who are on the fence on whether to leave or not.
We cannot be complacent. The worst case is you get over-prepared and the storm's not that bad. We can live with that. Let's not be under-prepared. Secure your pets. If they're outside, bring them inside. Take care. They're part of the family, too. They're part of our community. Make sure that you're securing any furniture outside or anything, Halloween decorations. You want to make sure that you bring those in, too. Anything that can turn into debris, bring that inside. If you're going to evacuate, look, today's Thursday, do it now. Don't wait till the last minute. We're already getting reports on the interstate that it's kind of getting clogged up a little bit. So let's make those plans, and proper planning prevents poor performance.
And it's all about planning, right? And he brings up a good point. A lot of people have Halloween decorations out. It is October, and we're only a few weeks away from Halloween. So remember to bring those loose items in. Anything, patio furniture, rocking chairs. I saw somebody in a residential home take their rocking chairs, flip them upside down on the edge just so they have some more stability and they don't become projectiles. So we're outside of Lafayette here in Breaux Bridge, but most of southern Louisiana looks like this behind me. You have a swamp. And I want to show you some things that are noting to me. It's been a quiet night. It is dead calm. Look at the stillness of the water. There's something eerie about the swamp at night, but it really is a serene place. It's quiet. This is going to look very different. The water rose in Laura, and this debris pile right here, just over here to the right of the camera, makes me think that that was some of the surge that we had from Laura. Now, not all that high. Remember, we're about 40 to 50 miles inland, Mike. And so even here, surges of vulnerability just because of how low-lying everything is. Remember, even in Lafayette, everyone knows the cemeteries in New Orleans, they're above ground because the elevation's so low, and we are vulnerable to storm surge. And when you have a major hurricane like we have with Delta, storm surge is going to be a big problem along with the winds.
Being smart here is a good thing. I love what the mayor said there. Proper planning prevents poor performance. And that is so, so true. If you're ready, you can handle it, that's for sure. Chris, thanks so much for the update there. And it's going to be rocking and rolling there tomorrow when we join Chris live from that area. As far as the winds go, they're not bad right now. I mean, it's calm where Chris is. That water not even moving, right? So Lake Charles, our winds are at 8, New Orleans at 7, and Ahoma just 10 miles per hour, but these will go up significantly through the night tonight and throughout the day tomorrow. You take a look at when the tropical storm force winds are anticipated to arrive. That'll happen tomorrow morning. So expect winds here that'll likely gust over 40 miles an hour in the morning, then only get worse through the afternoon and through the evening. Now, we've put on in an outline in white the forecast cone for the hurricane, and then put in the colors here the areas of wind, all right? Highlighted in purple, 110 mile per hour winds in a core there in the southwest corner of Louisiana. So that's going to be Cameron, Lake Charles, Jennings, Lafayette, Pecan Island, Grand Chenier. These are places where you could have 110 mile per hour wind gusts. Hurricane force wind gusts, 74 plus miles an hour, highlighted in red. That could be as far west as Port Arthur, Texas, as far north as Alexandria, close to Lafayette, and then very close to Baton Rouge as well. We could see power outages in these locations. We could see trees come down, limbs come down, furniture as the the mayor was talking, lawn furniture be tossed. As far as the expected size, it's expected to grow in size. It's already doing that. Tropical storm force winds 160 miles out from the center. The core of hurricane winds hasn't expanded all that much. It's still about 35 miles from the center. It's a pretty tight core of hurricane winds, and that's not expected to widen a whole lot before landfall. And you can see coming in here somewhere maybe near a Cameron, Louisiana, and then coming up and pulling more to the northeast could put a city like Lafayette at more danger than it was during Hurricane Laura, and this is why we anticipate the winds that could gust over 100 miles an hour there, Alex.
Yeah, that could really do a number on that community. They've already postponed the game, the Ragin' Cajuns game that was supposed to take place wisely. I know a lot of the businesses there have been preparing to today. Flash flood watch is posted because there's also that rainfall risk. So heavy rain likely throughout much of Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, Arkansas, even parts of eastern Texas. How much rain? Well, we could see upwards of 8 inches of rain in some spots, 8 to 12 from Lake Charles down to the coast. So pretty limited area. A lot of 5 to 8 inch totals, though, stretching from southwest to northeast Louisiana. That's one of the positives with this storm. Even though we're seeing a lot of rain, it's moving. So we're not looking at days of rain and feet of rain to count by the end of it. We've got the showers, the storms moving through tonight and into the overnight. Heavy downpours at times, but the main bulk of the rain and, of course, the wind with the landfall will come as we head into the afternoon hours tomorrow. Take a look at 2 p.m. Lake Charles getting swamped up to Alexandria. Alexandria, you're in the thick of it through dinner time tomorrow into the evening hours. And then by the time we get into the overnight and early Saturday, we'll also be watching portions of Arkansas and western Mississippi for some of the heaviest rain. So through tomorrow morning, all the way from Louisiana into Florida, heavy downpours could possibly trigger some flash flooding, and then tomorrow into early Saturday, it is that portion of Louisiana, really all the way up to the state line with Arkansas, down to the coastal parts of southwestern Louisiana. Also a severe threat, Torcon values of 3 with these landfalling tropical systems. We so often see tornadoes spin up, so can't rule that out from areas around Lafayette over to southern sections of Mississippi. So just be prepared for that possibility as well tomorrow. But as I said, Mike, you know, one positive is with this thing moving, we're not going to be talking about feet of rain like we have with other storms this season.
We're going to keep it at inches this time. We're hopeful of that it's going to be less of a flood threat than previous systems. But having said that, there still will be isolated spots where flooding will be a concern, especially near the core of the hurricane itself. You know, we've had waves of rain that have come through today. You get a thunderstorm, then it back off, then you get another wave that came through and bring you some more thunderstorms. That's going to get a little bit more intense, a little bit steadier through the night, through the day tomorrow. Look at this, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's southern Louisiana and Texas here, and that's going to include I-10 getting hit pretty hard. And then it's just a continuation. And in some of these bands, especially on northern eye wall or even the eastern eye wall, boy, it's going to get rocking and rolling, folks. I mean, it is just going to be a hunker down time, no question about that. And then look at this big slug of really heavy rain, thunderstorms, and intense winds with the eye basically about right here, just off the coastline, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll be getting hit hard in Lake Charles and in Jennings and Lafayette. The heavy rain pushing up through Alexandria, up through Shreveport as well. I think Shreveport gets some pretty heavy rain. The core of the winds will likely go to your east, but I wouldn't be surprised to see tropical storm force winds that might gust over 50 miles an hour in Shreveport, not to mention several inches of rain that could come in for us here across the Arklatex. So plenty of rain still to come for us here. In some spots, it could be as high as 9 inches of rain near, again, the eye that comes in, but a large area here where upwards of 6 inches, half a foot or more could fall for us. That could go even up to I-20 and beyond, with 3 to 5 inches of rain flirting with us up through Arkansas and maybe even near Memphis, Tennessee. So a large reach with the heavy rain, but the good news is this is not feet, this is inches, and as the storm is on the move here, it'll just dissipate and quickly move its way north and east. A lot more to come here on this show tonight. We've got our continuing coverage of Hurricane Delta. It has strengthened today in the Gulf of Mexico, closing in on the Louisiana coastline. We've got continuing live coverage from Louisiana tonight, taking you to those areas where evacuations continue in advance of what is likely to be a very dangerous hurricane strike. Stay with us. We are your Hurricane Authority right here on the Weather Channel.
America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel. hurricane season doesn't stop for a pandemic, and neither do we.
From this point forward, conditions will continue to deteriorate.
Don't let COVID-19 take your eye off the tropics. This year's threat is more complex and dangerous than ever before.
Remain vigilant, pay close attention to the Weather Channel.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe every day. Storm safety in a pandemic, all season long, right here on the Weather Channel.
And welcome back into the Weather Channel's continuing live coverage here of Hurricane Delta. We got you covered from the swamps of Louisiana, which most of southern Louisiana looks just like this behind me. And you've got all these communities like Abbeville and Avery Island. New Iberia runs to our south. We're in St. Martin Parish, only about 10 miles from downtown Lafayette. And what we have known from the mayor, they are going to implement a curfew starting tomorrow afternoon, about 4 p.m. through 8 a.m. Saturday. That's when we expect some of the worst of the weather. But it's going to arrive well in advance of that. It's been quiet for the most part today. We had a couple of showers. That's really about it. And looking behind me, I mean, look at the Spanish moss. It's draped almost vertical, which means very little wind. There has been almost no wind. And the thing that's so amazing to me, we've had such a nice air mass here in the southeast the last week, and that tropical air now coming in from Delta, it can be felt. It is humid, it is tropical, and it's what you imagine Louisiana to feel like. So it's crazy how you can change, because we got here yesterday, Mike, it felt pleasant. It wasn't that humid, although dew points were coming up. Today, it is a full tropical air mass. Tomorrow, we've got the rain, the wind, and the major impacts here from Hurricane Delta.
You know, Chris, I wanted to ask you, we've got a lot of unpopulated area there, thank goodness. But how many vulnerable communities do you think there are? I mean, a lot of these communities are so flat. They'd be very susceptible to not only some storm surge flooding, but rainfall flooding, even though the rainfall forecast is not that extreme.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Everyone thinks of southern Louisiana as the major population centers like Lake Charles, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, even Houma and New Iberia, and then New Orleans, of course. But there are, I would say, more than you can count of just smaller communities, because even in our vantage point, there are several homes and neighbors that have built their almost community. There's probably less than 20 people in this little area around Lake Martin, but there's so many of them. If you add them up all together, you're talking about thousands of people who live in very rural areas of Louisiana. A lot of times too, Mike, their homes are built up off the ground because they know the area floods, they know what kind of topography they're at, and they're in a swamp, which the water levels definitely fluctuate even given the tides. And so with storm surge, that's a huge issue. This will likely be underwater, especially when we begin the fact we're going to have that onshore flow. But you bring up a really good point. There's so many of these smaller communities, which many people outside of Louisiana may have never even heard of, but there's lots of those all across the path of Delta.
And then basically they're living in marshland, which is so vulnerable to tropical systems like this, especially when you're talking potentially Category 3 hurricane making landfall. Chris, appreciate the update there from Louisiana. I see the storm surge locations there, storm surge warnings that are in effect, and we're anticipating potentially a Category 3 at landfall. You know, the intensity went up today, and it may continue to go up because we're seeing the pressures drop as reported by the hurricane hunters that are flying out there right now. But if you take that center track, it's going to come very close to where Hurricane Laura made landfall about 6 weeks ago. Hurricane Delta's forecast, as far as the wind field goes for hurricane force winds, we don't anticipate huge amounts of expansion with that. It's about 35 miles out from the center, so it's got a fairly small reach, but the tropical storm force winds go well beyond that, extending out as far as 160 miles from the center. You take a look at Laura by comparison, which was a little bit bigger hurricane force winds, similar reach for tropical storm force winds, but there's going to be a smaller corridor of hurricane winds, we think, with this one. But the track, gosh, it's just so eerie that these two are so close at such a short window, too, about 6 weeks. Landfalls almost in the exact same locations, and we anticipate Delta to be very close to Cameron there. By the way, 4 landfalls in Louisiana in a single season is the record. We've done it, we've had 7 different times. And by the way, this year has been 3. We make landfall with Delta, almost a certainty, Alex. We will tie the record.
It's been one heck of a year, right? Right now, we've got a Category 3 hurricane on our hands once again. So we had it weaken upon making landfall there in the Yucatan, strengthening once again. So a major hurricane here as it approaches the Louisiana coast. Once again, we are looking at the Gulf Coast of western Gulf Coast, I should say, seeing some of the biggest impacts. This is 345 miles south right now of Cameron, Louisiana. Cameron, of course, a name we remember from the impacts of Laura. Maximum wind potential, plenty of areas down in the southwestern part of the state, 110 plus mile-per-hour winds. And so we think the power outage threat is going to be extremely high. We think we're going to see a lot of power outages. And unfortunately, after Laura, 9 people died as a result of improper generator usage, carbon monoxide poisoning. So you got to remember how to keep you and your family safe when using those generators. So always operate it outdoors. Never run it in a home, never run it in a garage. Don't run it on the patio very close to your home. Don't plug it into walls, and use heavy-duty extension cords to connect appliances to it. Also, turn the generator on, then plug the appliances into it. So turn it on, then plug one by one. We've got much more headed your way after this.
Domino's.
Real.
When your cameras roll,
This is something nobody can imagine.
our experts react.
What do you do?
Oh my gosh!
Jaw-dropping.
Nope, 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 all the way back home.
It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
This is the worst case scenario for the state of Louisiana. The devastation that is in southwest Louisiana right now as a result of Hurricane Laura. It's far and wide. Delta now taking a very similar track as Hurricane Laura, taking aim at areas in Morgan City, Cameron, and Calcasieu parishes. This is a very tense and serious situation that the entire country needs to pay attention to.
We are tracking Hurricane Delta for you tonight right here on the Weather Channel. Could become our 10th landfalling tropical system this season. I'm Mike Bettis, and it's been a historic and record-breaking one in so many ways. We know a lot of you have questions. Please send them our way. If you're on social media, include the hashtag Hurricane Questions.
Absolutely. I'm Alex Wilson here with you tonight. We've got a lot to talk about, Mike. Unfortunately, I'd say hard to believe, but I think everybody's kind of like the way this year has gone, not necessarily hard to believe. But here we are in the Greek alphabet dealing with a major hurricane with its sights set on the U.S. and some of the same areas that have been hit so hard this season.
It'll be our 4th landfall in Louisiana, and this will be the first time that a Greek named storm will have hit the United States. You know, we had the Greek names back in 2005, the only other time we've used the Greek names. We had some landfalls in Central America and down through the Caribbean, but never in the United States. 115 mile per hour hurricane right now. It's considered a major hurricane if it's category 3, 4, or 5. The pressure has been dropping. 9:59 hurricane hunters are finding evidence of lower pressure than that, which means that the wind speeds may even go up in the next advisory that we anticipate here within the next half an hour. Northwest movement at 12 miles per hour. Had an eye form today. That's closed up a little bit now. You can't really see it. It's become a little bit more obscured, but we've got an intense hurricane on our hands. Hurricane warnings effect from Beaumont, Texas to Morgan City to Alexandria, Louisiana for us tonight. Hurricane hunters are flying now on the periphery of it at this point, but still finding tropical storm force winds way out beyond the center here. So what that means is for many of you that aren't going to be necessarily even in the forecast cone, you could still see tropical storm force winds. That may include Baton Rouge and New Orleans even. There's a look at it on the infrared, pretty tightly wound system at this point, deep amounts of convection now encircling the eye at this point. We're in a low wind shear environment, so the hurricane at this point is not encountering strong winds that are ripping it apart. We have warm sea surface temperatures adding fuel to basically inject into the storm. We've got weak high pressure overhead, also allow it to intensify, and dry air that's been well to the east and well to the west, nowhere near it. So it's in an atmosphere that continues to strengthen, and the wind shear is way up here. I think it's going to encounter that, but not till about the time of landfall. It may happen slightly before landfall, may happen at landfall, may happen slightly after landfall. And I think that might be key for the most intense winds, but we'll get the wind shear increasing here tomorrow evening through the overnight. And this is why we think that it's going to potentially weaken pretty quickly and maybe completely dissipate within 72 hours of landfall. There's a look. Warm sea surface temperatures. Temperatures, down here are 80 to 85 degrees, so plenty of juice to fuel a hurricane, and just offshore by about 75 miles, forecasted winds at 120 miles per hour. So at this point, Alex, what we'd recommend to people is anticipate a major Category 3 at landfall. If it ends up being a little bit less than that, that's okay, but anticipate the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, we've always said, I don't think anybody's like, I over-prepared. If anything, it's the under-preparation that gets you into trouble. Well, the impacts for this storm will be beyond the coast. 40 miles inland is Jennings, Louisiana. That's where we find our Paul Goodloe. Paul, you've seen some off and on rain here. Not nearly as heavy as what we're going to see, though, here moving forward.
Yeah, you know, even the winds as well, Alex, is really no wind at all. We wish there was some wind because the state bird of Louisiana, also known as the mosquitoes, are quite prevalent out here, standing next to Bayou Nipiquet here. And the rain and the wind, two things we'll definitely be dealing with over the next probably 36 hours or so. But it's that wind component that's going to be taking some trees down. They had mainly tree damage, even some homes with trees on them from Hurricane Laura, which really devastated parts of Calcasieu Parish. Of course, we're talking about Lake Charles, even Cameron, Louisiana. But the concern here is if you do have trees, beautiful trees here, and if you happen to have perhaps one that might not make it, large canopy of leaves. Again, it's still October. Most trees have green leaves on them. You might want to perhaps sleep on the other side of your house in case that tree comes down on your house, something you want to watch. And also keep an eye on your neighbor's trees as well. Those too could be also pushing on your property or perhaps on your house as well. Things you have to worry about, as well as the losing power and cell signal and internet service, things that we just, we're used to nowadays. Creature comforts we'll have to definitely concern ourselves with. So again, right now, some light rain, no wind, different story here, even tomorrow morning, and definitely 24 hours from now with the landfall of Delta. Yeah. Mike?
All right, appreciate the report, Paul. Things are going to go downhill quickly for us tomorrow there, unfortunately. We come back, tracking Delta. Our coverage returns you back to Louisiana, and we'll update you what the hurricane hunters are finding. Next update, by the way, about 20 minutes.
I have moderate real.
Holy moly.
When your cameras roll.
See, this is something nobody can imagine.
Our experts react.
What do you do? Oh my gosh. Jaw-dropping.
And with footage this insane.
Wow.
Here comes the snow, and there goes New York City.
There's no telling what they'll say next.
Nope, 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 all the way back home.
Oh! It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. You're watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel.
Gearing up for Hurricane Delta, Administrator Pete Gaynor joining us live this evening.
Pete, thanks so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Want to start with, I think, the obvious that a lot of people are asking. How do you prepare for almost a 1-2 punch within 6 weeks? Looks like some of the same communities hit hard by Laura are going to be dealing with Delta.
Yep. No one likes to take a second punch. However, FEMA has been on the Gulf Coast for a while, at least 6 weeks in strength. So we've been down there for Laura 6 weeks ago, and then 3 weeks ago for Sally. So FEMA has about 1,500 FEMA employees, plus our partners that have been down there. And of course, for Delta, we really ramped it up this time to make sure that we're ready for anything. So from the Corps of Engineers, National Guard, our friends at DOD, Coast Guard, all around with all their assets ready to go.
Pete, a lot of people, it seems, evacuating, not taking anything for granted, certainly after they had Laura come in. But as far as what we might anticipate, as far as damage might go, storm surge or wind damage from this, so many of these places were already damaged by Laura. What's your expectation as a government agency? And I know you model a lot of these things. What's the expectation here?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, I would like anyone who's in that cone to really listen to and heed the direction of your local emergency manager, your parish emergency managers, your state directors. So if told to evacuate, evacuate. One of the things that I'm worried about is, especially on the track it is today, not too far off the Laura track, is it's going to impact, and I'll pick Lake Charles, it's going to impact a community that was pretty beat up by Laura. And so it has a fragile power system, has a fragile water system, homes, a lot of blue tarps down there. So even though maybe it's a little bit less than Laura, that's really not the issue. It's really about the impacts on a community that's already been hit hard. That's what we're concerned about.
You mentioned how many FEMA employees are already there. do they have what they need to stay? Will they relocate and then head back in? I would imagine, you've got to, make preparations for your people as well.
Yeah, so we're embedded across the region. So whether we're embedded with the parish in the Emergency Operations Center at the state, in some cases I have a base camp down in Lake Charles. I pulled those employees out. They're going to spend the night in Houston just to make sure that they're out of the cone, and just a few hours drive back in. So we're well positioned in the region and around the region for whatever we may need.
Pete, I know that in times like this, there's a lot of logistics involved here, a lot of calls with the Hurricane Center, the White House. What's that been like today?
Yeah, so it's been today has been like the past. I don't know. I've lost count. I've talked to governors. I've talked to the White House. I've talked to all our partners. I talked to Ken Graham earlier to make sure we have the latest weather. This is the typical drumbeat of how we do it. And again, now as we run out of time to prepare, those residents that live down there that are under threat of Delta, the clock is ticking. And my message today is finish those preparations and hunker down. And again, heed the directions of your local emergency managers, your local elected officials. If told to evacuate, please do so.
Any other advice you have for the people? I've got to imagine there's fatigue, which makes people, maybe not pay as much attention as they should. What else do you want people to know in terms of if this storm is a second rough punch for these areas that were hit so hard, and what FEMA will do to help them after the fact?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Hurricane fatigue. Please don't be complacent. Please don't say, yeah, well, I survived Sally, I survived Laura, I'll survive this next one. Please don't do that. Take it seriously. Think about, you may have to go a little bit farther this time because we have a lot of the survivors from Laura that are in hotels and motels in the region, and you may be the next one to be displaced. So be prepared to move into a hotel or to go extra distance because there's lack of sheltering in the region just because the Gulf Coast has gotten beaten up these past months. So, and be COVID ready, be COVID safe. Make sure you have a mask. Make sure you have hand and sanitizer. Make sure you're ready to take care of you and yourself. You could be potentially impacted by Delta from a hurricane. Don't give yourself a double threat by being impacted by COVID-19. Be ready for both things.
A lot of complications this year. FEMA Administrator Pete Gaynor, we thank you so much for joining us. And I know you guys have your hands full this week and really this season, so thank you for your time.
And let's get back to Chris Bruin. He's live for us tonight outside Lafayette, Louisiana, in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. Chris, things are going to really go downhill through the day tomorrow. This time tomorrow could be taking a direct hit.
Absolutely. I mean, from Lafayette to Lake Charles and really everywhere in between, we are going to be seeing a landfall somewhere in that vicinity, okay? And weather's going to go downhill. This is the last night to prepare. Quiet night here in the swamp and all across Louisiana. It's been raining to our north, but dry here in south central Louisiana. By the time you wake up in the morning, that's going to look very different. And again, remember those mandatory evacuations for several of those coastal parishes, including Calcasieu, Lake Charles, very hard hit. But as we had to break, I want to continue to show you the scenes here from Louisiana. Remember, the swamp is huge in protecting communities from the dangerousness of storm surge, but there are areas that are going to see some devastating impacts, and we're talking a storm surge of upwards of 7 to 11 feet. The water looks like glass right now, but that is far from it for this time tomorrow. We got crews stretched across the state of Louisiana to keep you up to date with the latest information as Hurricane Delta bears closer to the northern Gulf Coast.
Harry was unbelievable. This is real.
When your cameras roll,
This is something nobody can imagine.
our experts react.
What do you do?
Oh my gosh.
Jaw-dropping.
Nope, 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 all the way back home.
It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow.
Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
Welcome back to Weather Underground. You're looking at video of the ongoing cleanup from the last time we had a hurricane make landfall here in Louisiana. That's Hurricane Laura about a month and a half ago. So, yeah, we have not finished that cleanup, that rebuilding process. We're talking the thousands of people still displaced from their homes. And now we're dealing with the approach of yet another hurricane. Not what you really wanted to see, but you know, I guess it's 2020, so I guess it's not to be not super surprising that we have still weird and strange things going on with this year of COVID. I guess we can just keep piling on, and hopefully 2021 won't have anything to do with what happened here in 2020. But right now, people are still trying to leave the Lake Charles area because they know what is coming. They've been through it before and do not want to go through it a second time. We have some Department of Transportation tower cams there showing you bumper-to-bumper traffic still leaving Lake Charles. And me and my team, we drove in from New Orleans this morning, and we're even watching traffic coming east from Lafayette into the New Orleans area and Baton Rouge as well. There was some bumper-to-bumper traffic, people going east, people going west down to the Texas line as well. Here in Jennings, Louisiana, we're concerned because, yes, we had some impacts with Laura a month and a half ago, but we could be dealing with that right front quadrant a lot closer to us, that center a lot closer to us. And we have a lot of trees around here, like this beautiful cypress tree. I mean, this says Louisiana, right? But look at the trees even around it. We still have a lot of green leaves. While other areas of perhaps the Northeast, New England, we got leaves falling off and changing colors. It's still early October, so we're still just ending the growing season now. So that means it's like a sail. The wind can catch these things and a lot more trees coming over. They had some tree damage with Laura, perhaps a lot more on their way as we head throughout tomorrow and tomorrow night with the landfall and approach of Hurricane Delta. Mike?
All right, appreciate it, Paul. Thanks so much for the update this evening. We're expecting an update from the Hurricane Center any minute now, but we want to give you the very latest on what we know with Delta. And we're answering some of your questions tonight as well. So keep those coming. So this is a question from Brittany. Why have all the hurricanes been going into the Gulf of Mexico this year? Since Isaias, the East Coast has been quiet. Excellent question, Brittany. Appreciate that. One big reason has been the dominant high pressure that's been basically protecting the East Coast of the United States. Not unusual for it to set up, especially later in the season, but from August 1st to now, dominant Bermuda high pressure. Really, I'm going to circle where it's most dominant, all right? And then we've had high pressure that's been sitting over basically Baja of California. If there's going to be any weakness in these two ridges, it's going to be right here through the Gulf of Mexico. And so where storms have been forming, they've been forming farther south where you see the trade wind flows, and then you're going to see, some avenue for them to come this direction if they do. That's what we've seen last couple of storms here. Certainly what we're seeing now with Delta, but thanks to high pressure, the East Coast, for the most part, has been relatively unscathed. In fact, we've had no landfalls in the peninsula of Florida, and that's something for now, potentially, though, in Louisiana, because we think New Orleans, who's been in the cone 6 different times, is at risk for tropical storm force winds with the strongest winds going off to your west. All right, so let's give you the latest on what we know. I'm going to give you the latest advisory from the Hurricane Center. They have the new 8 o'clock advisory or 7 o'clock Central Time advisory. Not in quite yet. We'll probably get that at the top of the hour. But 115-mile-per-hour winds, would expect those winds to remain that or even go higher with subsequent advisories. Northwest movement here at 12 miles per hour. One of those hurricane force winds get in there likely by tomorrow afternoon. There's going to be core in this area right here near Cameron, Louisiana, or Grand Chenier here over toward Lake Charles in Lafayette, where you're at greatest risk for some of the highest winds that we end up seeing here. Probability of tropical storm force winds goes over even into New Orleans and Baton Rouge and as far to the west as Galveston and Houston. So even though we're going to be far away from that, Alex, we still could see some tropical storm force winds outside of the cone.
Yeah, and of course, we also have the severe threat on top of all of this. As we get those systems, tropical systems making landfall, we oftentimes on that northeast side of the storm system, that right front quadrant, get in on some severe weather, particularly tornadoes. So we watch the path of this. We're going to be watching, again, that front right quadrant, already seeing some thunderstorms today across southern sections of Mississippi into southern Alabama. So we've seen some punchy storms with very heavy rainfall. Again, right front quadrant, that's the area that we we look at for tornado development, because we have just enough wind shear, winds from the southeast at the surface, more southerly just off the surface. So again, change of wind direction with height allows some of those storms to develop some rotation. Into tonight, Torcon values of 2 or less. So not looking at a big chance, Mike, but tomorrow 3 out of 10 really throughout a lot of south central and southeastern Louisiana, a little bit of Mississippi as well.
All right, Alex, thank you for that. A lot more coverage coming up in our next hour of Weather Underground. And the new advisory has come in. No significant changes. Still a 115-mile-per-hour hurricane. Pressure's dropped slightly.
Good morning.
More treatment.
We're going to try something different today.
Oh, it's so pretty.
Dogs bring out the good in us. Pedigree brings out the good in them.
Facing leaks takes strength. So here's to the strong who trust in our performance and comfortable, long-lasting protection. Because your strength is supported by ours. Depend. The only thing stronger than us is you.
Right now on Weather Underground, Hurricane Delta closing in on the U.S. Gulf Coast. We have extended coverage tonight as this powerful hurricane strengthens in the Gulf of Mexico, barrels towards landfall. We go in depth on where dangerous storm surge, damaging winds, and flooding rainfall will hammer the coastline and push well inland.
Well, this includes some of the same areas ravaged by Hurricane Laura just over a month ago, where evacuations are underway and preparations are being rushed to completion as yet another monster storm bears down. We've got live coverage of the developing situation right now on Weather Underground.
We're glad you're with us tonight for special.
I'm Alex Wilson with you until 9 p.m. Eastern. And then, of course, Weather Channel coverage continues around the clock through landfall. We're also streaming on Sirius XM channel 721 until Saturday. But Mike, tonight we've got our live team coverage, and we got meteorologist Chris Bruin, meteorologist Paul Goodlow reporting live from Louisiana with about 24 hours or even less to go until landfall.
Yeah, we've got everything you need to know about this hurricane. You're going to hear from both of those gentlemen coming up here in just a moment. Want to bring you the latest, though, because the newest advisory was just issued by the National Hurricane Center. The 8 o'clock advisory maintains the wind speed at 115 miles per hour, so still a Category 3. The pressure has dropped a few millibars. It was 959, now 956. The pressure continues to drop. I would expect the wind speeds to correspond and go up. North-northwest movement now at 12 miles per hour, so it's jogging more to the north than northwest as previous, 310 miles outside of Cameron, Louisiana. As far as the forecast track, no changes there. That'll come at 11 o'clock if there are any, but the forecast has remained very consistent for the last couple of days, and forecast to be just prior to landfall, a Category 3 major hurricane Friday afternoon, and then encountering some wind shear, some land interaction, and quickly degrading from there. Hurricane warnings remain here. Beaumont, Texas to Morgan City, Louisiana, and as far north as Alexandria, Louisiana. I-10 included in that hurricane warning. New Orleans under a tropical storm warning. Baton Rouge, Natchez, all under tropical storm warnings right now. And in fact, even Galveston is under a tropical storm warning for winds that could expand well beyond where the strong core of winds is, right near the eye. We did get an eye today, not nearly as visible as it was earlier today, but for the first time in its history, Delta provided an eye today, showing you that there is some strengthening happening. We have warm sea surface temperatures, a low wind shear environment, ripe for intensification. That's what's happened. And now close enough to see it on the radar. You can see plenty of showers from the Texas coast all the way back to the Big Bend of Florida, folks. So quite a reach with the rain here. And you can see how the bands of rain are now pushing south to north. Pretty good band coming through Hattiesburg right now. Really heavy rain through central and northern Louisiana tonight. Jackson will be in the rain, maybe continuously at this point up through landfall, and bands of rain that are coming through southern Louisiana. Some of those bands through tomorrow could contain some thunderstorms that produce tornadoes. It's just something to keep in mind. Alex is going to talk about that in just a little bit. But because we've got some pretty heavy rain coming down, flash flood watches in a corridor here between Port Arthur, Lake Charles, Morgan City, all the way up past Natchez and past Yazoo City. So quite a few locations here where heavy rain could be a factor. The good news is the hurricane should be moving along. It's not going to stall out like some of our previous systems and dump feet of rain. We think, 10 inches might be about the max any particular place gets. As far as winds go through tonight, breezy, but not bad at all. Winds will increase through the day tomorrow, especially as the eye gets closer and closer. Here we are, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You can see the eye sitting just off the coastline here. Winds now 40 to 50 in Lake Charles and Port Arthur, anywhere from 25 to 35 New Orleans toward Baton Rouge. And then watch this thing come in between, I'd say, 6 and 8 o'clock is a pretty good bet tomorrow Central Time. Hurricane force winds will extend at about 35 miles from the center. That could put a Cameron, Grand Chenier, that could put Lake Charles, that could put Lafayette in the hurricane force winds. New Orleans and Baton Rouge, a very breezy day, and maybe still breezy enough, Alex, that we'd have some tree limbs that come down, maybe even some shallow-rooted trees that get knocked over. So there could be a large area where sporadic power outages are possible.
Yeah, so we got to think about those generators, make sure we're using them safely after the storm. Well, here's what we know about Hurricane Delta right now. Nearly 10 million people are in the cone of this storm. States of emergencies have been issued in Louisiana, in Alabama, and in Mississippi. The Louisiana Department of Transportation says evacuations are causing heavy traffic on I-10 westbound from Lake Charles to the Louisiana-Texas state line. And the effects for Delta aren't just going to be at the coast. We've got Jennings, Louisiana, about 40 miles inland. That's where we find Paul Goodlow. Paul, you mentioned you've kind of been getting the appetizer of the rain and the wind today, knowing that the main event comes tomorrow.
Yeah, right now, the strongest breeze we felt, which might be 2 miles per hour, just blowing through right now, and some rain. But that's the concern because you're basically pre-saturating the ground. Not only here, but even up towards Alexandria, they're seeing some decent rain right now. And then we have the heavy rain coming in throughout the day, all day long on Friday into Friday night with the landfall and the passing by of Hurricane Delta. But this area, no stranger to hurricanes. Laura hit this area about a month and a half ago. Well, let's show you the cleanup still underway about, say, 45 miles west of here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. You see the blue tarps, and people are still doing their best to kind of get back to the new normal that they can after a major hurricane made landfall and devastated that community. We're still talking about thousands upon thousands of people have been displaced. Some in Baton Rouge, some here in Jennings using hotel rooms, some in New Orleans, some in Houston. They're trying to get back, and now they're dealing with, yes, another hurricane approaching the same area, but maybe a little farther east. And that's where we are. In fact, the actual center point, last time I checked, was in Welch, which is 12 miles to the west of us, which means if that holds true, we're going to be in that center, even here in Jennings, Louisiana. And people are trying to get out of harm's way. Take a look at these cameras here showing the traffic on I-10. It's bumper to bumper from times, and a lot of people trying to move west into Texas, out of the harm's way, also trying to move east as well. We noticed traffic we drove in from New Orleans today, but the big concern is we're going to be in this. Enjoy the dry time, get the dog outside, maybe extended walk, because tomorrow the rain comes in, does not stop until perhaps after the eye passes us by, and that might not be until perhaps maybe hours from now, tomorrow. So we're talking late tomorrow night when the eye comes in and moves past us, perhaps even towards the midnight hour as well. So a lot of hours we're watching and waiting for the impacts, but not just here in Jennings. We can go maybe 40, 50 miles east of here in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. Also going to be in that right front quadrant. Also going to be in the wind, in the rain for hours upon hours. That's where our Chris Bruin is this evening. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Paul, we got a gnarly day ahead for us here, heading into especially the latter half of the day on Friday into Friday night and Saturday. So big problem here. Lafayette, we are about 10 miles outside of the city, and the whole countryside here generally is swamp. Either cypress swamp or just marshy estuary type landscape. Now, the mayor-president, Josh Guillory, here's what he had to say, especially with the community hosting so many evacuees from Lake Charles who don't have a place to go to in hotels, and also residents who are still recovering from Laura.
We're still helping out our region recover from Hurricane Laura. We have our friends in Calcasieu Parish, Cameron Parish, from Allen and on, all southwest Louisiana. We sent utility systems, our utility systems crews out there to help out, just as did many municipalities across our state and our country. So that does stretch us a little thin, but the good thing is we're one country. We have teamwork across our nation, and we have crews coming in from other states that are helping us out as well.
So again, it's hard to imagine southwestern Louisiana being hit again by a powerful and, in fact, potentially major hurricane. It's a major hurricane now, so you want to prepare for that. There may be a little weakening before landfall. Either way, we're still talking about a powerhouse storm. huge wave action, especially at the coast and the low-lying areas. You're going to have major wind damage. And Bettis, you know, some people may be wondering, has this ever happened before? An area within miles being hit directly by two storms within weeks. If we go back to 2004, not to compare storms, but Florida, Jean and Francis made landfall within 2 miles within 3 weeks. So it does happen, and it's hard to think about that being the case again this year in southwestern Louisiana.
Nothing should surprise us anymore. But yeah, that hit in Florida with that, gosh, what are the odds of that happening? And here we are potentially doing it all over again in a place that's just so vulnerable to hurricanes. Chris, appreciate the update tonight. Talking about the winds that we're likely to see with this hurricane currently, it's very calm. You saw Chris and Paul's reports there. There's no wind really to speak of. Got an east wind in New Orleans right now, sitting about 13 miles per hour in Houma. We've got winds at about 12 miles per hour, but they only ramp up from this point going forward, unfortunately. Down here at some of the buoys, by the way, we're getting some reports of 25 plus mile per hour winds. But I want to show you what the max wind potential could be for us here, because you look at where the outline of the forecast cone is, that's in white, and then we've laid down the colors of the forecasted winds. Potential 110 plus mile per hour winds, which could be Cat 3 here in the purple area. That might go north of I-10 even. So Cameron, Lake Charles, Jennings, close to Lafayette, but we think that Lafayette, you'll at least be in the hurricane force winds of 74 plus miles per hour. Look for trees to come down, power lines to be compromised, structural damage to homes and businesses. Then this area with 60 plus mile per hour winds could go north of Monroe and flirt with us here in Jackson. Could get those in Baton Rouge, New Orleans. We could get wind gusts over 40 miles an hour. So even though, you know, the cone is right here, there could be strong winds well outside of that. Just keep that in mind. And storm surge, by the way, will be quite significant all on the east side of the storm, all the way over. You'll feel the effects of the waves all the way over into the beaches, the panhandle of Florida, Alex.
Yeah, then we've got the rain, which also is affecting parts of West Florida today. That's where our flash flood threat will be located today and into tomorrow morning. In fact, all the way from Florida into Texas. Show you that in just a minute. Want to start with, though, our flash flood watches that are posted. Again, a lot of Louisiana included, parts of Mississippi, Texas, and Arkansas as well. Rainfall footprint with this one will be significant, but we're not going to be measuring the rain in feet. There's one positive as opposed to other storms. This is moving quickly enough that the 8 to 12-inch rainfall totals stay around really south of Lake Charles. It's a good 5 to 8-inch footprint, though, up from the Louisiana-Arkansas state line all the way back to the coast, so that could lead to some flash flooding issues. I mentioned some of the heavy rain overnight possible along the Gulf Coast from Texas all the way over into Florida. Of course, the main event with the rain and the wind and all the other effects comes tomorrow. By mid to late morning, that's when we see that rainfall really amp up in its intensity and coverage across much of Louisiana, at least the southern half. Through the afternoon, you can see heavy rain in Alexandria, heavy rain in Lake Charles, and that will continue to move northward as we head into the evening and overnight hours. So Arkansas, parts of western Mississippi also watching for that likelihood. Here's our flash flood danger into tomorrow morning. So we're watching Florida all the way over towards the state of Louisiana. And then tomorrow we've got Texas over to about western Alabama. But you can see the highest likelihood will be that corridor in yellow across the state of Louisiana, including Lake Charles and coastal areas all the way up to near the Louisiana or Arkansas state line. Tomorrow across southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, also a tornado threat, which we oftentimes see with these landfalling tropical systems. Mike, 3 out of 10 on the Torcon.
That rain, Alex, though, is going to be a problem in some locations, especially close to where the hurricane makes landfall. We've had sporadic waves of thunderstorms throughout the day today. Alexandria will have some more tonight. We'll have some storms that race through the I-10 corridor this evening. Could be Lafayette all the way back toward Beaumont and even back towards, say, Houston and Galveston. Heavier rain through the late morning tomorrow, and then it just becomes steady and heavy throughout the afternoon. Now you're looking at, so the hurricane's down here. Now you're looking at the northern eye wall of the storm. Very intense winds, very intense rainfall here. And so that's when you're going to get hit hard. Then we go into Saturday overnight, where the storm is inland at this point, but still very heavy rain on the northern side. Very gusty winds there that could be gusting well over 60 miles an hour in Shreveport, and strong winds past I-20 will now start to back off on the rain south of I-10. But how much do we pick up here? A small area where roughly 9 inches of rain could fall, but a larger area highlighted in orange here that goes past I-20, where a half a foot of rain or more is possible, but could even still pick up 3 to 4 inches of rain around Beaumont over toward Lafayette, maybe as far north as Yazoo City, Mississippi. Alex?
Offering up a very dangerous storm surge threat, particularly across the south central Louisiana coast. Some of these communities, not everybody, but some, could be looking at 7 to 11 feet of surge. So that's obviously getting us into that dangerous, life-threatening territory. 2 communities that we think will be significantly impacted, New Iberia and Delcambre. Now, it looks like New Iberia escapes it, but off to the south of town, that's where we've got Highway 90. That's where we've got a lot of our businesses, restaurants. So these could be inundated. As you can see, plenty of areas with up to 9 feet of surge. Then we head over to the Delcambre area, over 9 feet of surge possible throughout this community. So this is an area where plenty of one-story homes will be completely underneath water. And this is going to be that kind of devastating storm surge value that you see once you're over 9 feet. Very hard to have anything left in some of these cases. Now, 1 to 3 feet, that's at the point where you can't leave anymore. The water is going to be too high, the road's impassable. That can even knock you off your feet. Again, this is not gently rising water. This is going to have wave action. Then we get you above 6 feet. Now we're about our height. Now water's into the first story of your home. You're headed up to the second story, or in some cases the roof if you've got a one-story home. 9 feet, that's when your home is going to be submerged. Street signs submerged, cars floating around in the water. And then, of course, anything over 9 feet, absolutely catastrophic. If you have been told to leave, now is the time to go.
That right there, proof, folks. What an illustration, right? We've got a lot more coverage of Hurricane Delta when we come back here on Weather Underground. It's strengthening right now. It's closing in on the U.S. Gulf Coast. What effect will it have in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama? We're going to take you back live to the coast, where evacuations continue in advance of what is going to be a very dangerous landfall tomorrow. We're right back on Weather Underground.
Or watching America's most trusted TV news network.
We've got a severe weather threat.
Winds have been gusting the full force of this thing.
The Weather Channel. Hurricane season doesn't stop for a pandemic, and neither do we.
From this point forward, conditions will continue to deteriorate.
Don't let COVID-19 take your eye off the tropics. This year's threat is more complex and dangerous than ever before.
Remain vigilant, pay close attention to the Weather Channel.
No one can cover this historic hurricane season better than the Weather Channel. Get the information you need to stay safe every day. Storm safety in a pandemic, all season long, right here on the Weather Channel.
Thanks for tuning in to the Weather Channel tonight. We, of course, are monitoring the latest results on Hurricane Delta. Still a major hurricane churning in the Gulf of Mexico as we speak, and we are less now than 24 hours from landfall. So expect conditions to really go downhill. We're deep in the swamp outside of Lafayette, Louisiana. A lot of southern Louisiana is swampland, so you've got water that is vulnerable. It's very low lying, and in some cases underwater. So a lot of these smaller communities and people who live in them, their homes are built up so they can handle the rise and fluctuations in water. Bugs are out in full force. It is an eerily quiet night here on the swamp. I want to show you our light, just give you an idea. We don't have smell-o-vision, but we can show you what it may be like to be out in the swamp, just as you imagine. A dead calm wind. It is dead calm. There is almost no wind tonight, and you can see that just by the Spanish moss. And look at the bugs just flying about. You know, we've had a pretty nice weather pattern up till this point. We've had drier, cooler air. We were in the 50s here in Louisiana, and now, boy, as that changed. That air mass from Delta has come in. That's just ripening up the atmosphere in preparations of the extreme winds that are set to come in this time tomorrow. Also, the extreme amount of rainfall. This will be a quick moving storm and not going to be a repeat of Sally by any means, but it's still going to put down 6 to 12 inches of rainfall. Hurricanes are powerhouses when it comes to water, Mike, and that is something we will see. So the risk here for flooding, and remember too, this area has already seen their fair share of tropical systems, so we're well above average when it comes to rainfall, and flooding will be an issue, but wind damage and that storm surge, I think, is going to be the biggest issue. How likely is it that we could see a shift? The models have been so confident, Mike, on the track. How likely is it, though, that we could see it move a little farther east and maybe Lake Charles gets spared some of the worst of the winds? Do you think that is a possibility, or are we pretty set we're going to have hurricane force winds in Lake Charles all the way to Lafayette?
I mean, I guess anything is possible, Chris. I wouldn't bank on it, though. Wobbles can happen, too, and if a wobble happens close to a landfall, that could change, where the eye comes in. But, boy, the forecast has been so consistent, and the models are just locked on to where this thing could come in. So we feel pretty confident about where it's going to go, and really even in the middle of the cone seems just so locked in right now, which would put it very close to where Laura made a landfall. Chris, appreciate the report tonight. If you see the forecast this evening, notice that just offshore, about 75 miles offshore, forecasting a Category 3, 120-mile-per-hour hurricane. There, Hurricane Delta's forecast wind field, and I'm going to draw a circle on there, and it's a compact wind field. The wind does only extend about 35 miles from the center of the hurricane force winds. Laura's hurricane force winds were a little bit wider and maybe just narrowly by a little bit farther to the east. There's a look at where Laura made landfall and where the center track of the hurricane forecast is for Delta. It's only 15 miles apart. That can mean everything for a place like Lake Charles when it comes to storm surge. We were thinking that Laura's track was going to come a little bit farther west. That was going to really inundate Lake Charles with storm surge. It really didn't. It really came almost basically right over Lake Charles. That actually minimized the storm surge. With Delta's track farther to the east, we won't really see storm surge in Lake Charles, but we could in other areas that didn't see it with Laura, other areas farther to the east. By the way, Delta making landfall will be the 4th named storm to make landfall in Louisiana this season, tying the record back in 2002 when we had Bertha, Hannah, Isidore, and Lily. And, multiple landfalls in Louisiana are actually pretty common. 7 previous seasons had 3 landfalls. And so, in some regards, we're like, oh, this is so 2020. But the reality is here, Alex, we've done this many times before. But this year will go down in the record books along with 2002.
Yeah, it's been a busy one, not unheard of, but I think for a lot of people, very unwelcome. We had Hurricane Laura, of course, and now we are looking at Hurricane Delta affecting some of the same areas. Remember, of the 25 deaths from Laura, 9 of those after the storm were a result of carbon monoxide poisoning, people using generators indoors. So we got to remember after the storm to keep our guard up and remain safe. 115-mile-per-hour Category 3 hurricane at this point, 310 miles south of Cameron, Louisiana. Maximum wind potential will be highest right there across the southwestern, south central part of the state, and that's where we think we're going to maximize the power outages. So if you are staying in the area, make sure you got a plan and preparations and stuff to keep you occupied through that power outage, whether it's food and water, whether it's flashlights and batteries, a solar power phone charger, stuff for the kids to do, games, puzzles, because it could be a long wait if we're looking at a wide area seeing the power outages. We saw with Laura how long it took to get some of that power reestablished. Could be some time after Delta as well. So generator safety after the storm, I know they're so helpful and they allow us to have some sense of normalcy, but they can be dangerous if not used properly. properly, make sure they're outdoors. Never run it inside your home. Never run it inside a garage or even on your patio, a porch with an overhanging close to the home. Don't run it there either. Do not plug that generator into the wall. Use heavy-duty extension cords to connect appliances to it and turn that generator on before plugging appliances into it. Well, still to come on the show, we're going to get you back out to our reporter, or meteorologists, I should say, in the field. And we're also going to give you a look at what the hurricane hunters are finding tonight. Delta is strengthened, and we're watching it. 24 hours to landfall. We're going to get you back out to Paul Goodlow and Chris Bruin next. And, of course, our team is scattered all around the region to give you the very latest.
Domino's. This is something nobody can imagine.
Our experts react.
What do you do?
Oh my gosh! Jaw-dropping.
Nope, 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 all the way back home.
It doesn't get better than this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Weather Gone Viral, Sunday nights at 9, here on the Weather Channel. Get your daily dose of everything weather.
Wow! Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
Weather Today from the Weather Channel. New episodes every day, only on Quibi.
This is the worst case scenario for the state of Louisiana. The devastation that is in southwest Louisiana right now as a result of Hurricane Laura is far and wide. Delta now taking a very similar track as Hurricane Laura, taking aim at areas in Morgan City, Cameron, and Calcasieu parishes. This is a very tense and serious situation that the entire country needs to pay attention to.
We are tracking Hurricane Delta on track to become our 10th landfalling tropical system this hurricane season. I'm Alex Wilson.
I'm Mike Bettis. It's hard to believe how many we have had. A record-breaking pace, that's for sure. We know a lot of you at home, you've got questions about Hurricane Delta. Please send them to us if you're on Twitter or Facebook tonight. Include the hashtag Hurricane Questions. We'll answer them live on the show tonight. Nothing's off limits, and we've had some great questions already tonight.
Yeah, we have. And I know, now that we're 24 hours-ish between here and landfall, people have a lot that they're wondering and, a lot of things that could happen between now and then, too.
All right. We encourage curious minds.
Yes.
We're the same way. So send them our way. I want to get you updated on what's happening currently with Delta. We got a new advisory from the Hurricane Center about a half an hour ago. No change in wind speed. We still have a 115-mile-per-hour Category 3 hurricane. Pressure did go down just a little bit, down to 956 from 959. If that pressure continues to drop, I would expect the wind speeds to go up and correspond. Northwest movement now at 12, so forward speed has maintained a little bit more to the north now than northwest. So we're getting a little bit more of that turn now, and eventually we think coming into southwest Louisiana. 310 miles out